Before we get into today's edition of Just the Truth, let me tell you about the latest special from Mike Lindell at MyPillow. The standard MyPillow, normally $49.98 for a limited time only, just $14.88 with promo code Joey. Go to MyPillow.com, click on the radio listener specials, and see all the specials. There's a limited quantity of just 10 at this special price. That's $14.88 with promo code Joey. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss Studio. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. White House Press Secretary made President Trump's priorities pretty clear in her first press briefing yesterday. Did you happen to see it? We have the highlights for you. And Karoline Leavitt announced that President Trump is restoring press passes for 440 journalists who had their credentials revoked by the Biden administration. And she made it very clear. The Trump administration is going to talk to all media, not just the left-wing activists in that briefing room. The Trump administration's temporary freeze on certain federal grants and loans is under legal attack. Democrats ran to the courts to stop it, and surprise, surprise, a Biden-appointed judge has already stepped in to put a temporary halt on that. And a local sheriff's race from 5 years ago created some contentious accusations of infidelity at the time by one of the candidates. The candidate who made those charges is now being told to apologize by the court. We have the details on the final chapter of this case.
I told you we'd be back.
And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free.
It's Joey Hudson.
I wanted to name it the Joey Hudson bill, but, they don't allow you to put names on bills. But I wanted to call it the Joey Hudson bill because I know that one's been near and dear to you for a number of years.
That's how it's done. Let your voice be heard.
And the truth shall set you free.
Here's Joey Hudson.
Karoline, on immigration. Of the 3,500 arrests ICE has made so far since President Trump came back into office, can you just tell us the numbers? How many have a criminal record versus those who are just in the country illegally?
All of them, because they illegally broke our nation's laws, and therefore they are criminals as far as this administration goes. I know the last administration didn't see it that way, so it's a big culture shift in our nation to view someone who breaks our immigration laws as a criminal, but that's exactly what they are.
Boom. Slam dunk. You want action? Well, you got it. White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt made it absolutely clear yesterday in her debut press conference that under President Donald Trump, illegal immigration is no longer tolerated. It is against the law. It's illegal. Not only is the Biden-era border crisis over, but the days of open borders and reckless policies are done, finished, end of sentence. Let's be clear here about what Ms. Leavitt said yesterday. If you try to enter this country illegally, you're going to be detained and you're going to be deported. That's it. No more weak enforcement. No more sanctuary city nonsense. No more pretending that illegal immigration is somehow good for the American people. This administration isn't just talking tough. They're actually enforcing the law. Imagine that, folks. America under Trump is once again a nation that respects our borders. Wow. Let's talk about the criminals that ICE has been rounding up. And Ms. Leavitt pointed out a couple of big arrests just in January alone. A Honduran citizen convicted of rape and a Honduran national who was convicted of second-degree murder. These are the people that Biden's policies allow to roam free in our country. And the more we learn about these arrests, the more angry I get knowing that these people were in our community. Let's not forget, these are not isolated cases. There are thousands of them all around the country. You don't hear much about them from the mainstream media, do you? Of course not. They don't want you to know the bad things that went on under Biden. Now, under Trump, they're being hunted down. They're being arrested, and they're going to be deported because that's a president who cares about American safety. And I'll tell you what, folks, the radical left is losing their minds over this, and they're trying to make it a big deal. They're trying to make Donald Trump to look like the boogeyman. But here's something else that's got the left in absolute meltdown. Trump's executive order expelling illegal migrants without asylum hearings. No more playing legal games. No more sitting in detention for years waiting for a court date. If you come here illegally, you leave, period. You go back. You don't collect whatever it is in monopoly you get. You go back home. And you know what the results have been? The numbers don't lie. Since Trump retook office, just in the not quite 2 weeks, migrant encounters at the southern border plummeted over 60%. They don't want to come anymore. They don't want to take the chance. That's the kind of immediate impact that happens when you actually enforce the law and you let people know that that's what you're going to do. You make it front and center. You put it on the evening news. Let's be honest, though. The left, they don't care about border security. They never have. They want the chaos. They want the crime. They want the open borders because it benefits them politically. They want these people here, no matter how dangerous, because they think they can turn them into voters down the line. That's what's important to them. They care more about their power than your safety. That's the truth. And while we're on the topic of the left's outrage, let's talk about this so-called federal grant freeze that has Democrats foaming at the mouth. Boy, did you get any of this yesterday in your news feed? My phone blew up yesterday. And not just news accounts, but from emails and various other people around the country that I have associations with. Some people who know better, they were panicking because maybe a certain organization that they're part of, they got a letter saying, well, guess what? Those federal funds, you're going to have to wait a few more days for them because we're taking a closer look at what those federal funds are doing. Ms. Leavitt had to set the record straight 4 times that this freeze is not affecting Social Security, it's not affecting Medicare, it's not going to affect food stamps, it's not going to affect welfare or other direct assistance programs. But here comes Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer screaming from the rooftops about how this is going to destroy America. This is the worst thing that's ever happened. Donald Trump's, he's taking your money. This is a crisis. You see, what this is really about is stopping the massive wasteful spending that has exploded under Joe Biden. You got to start somewhere. So you got to just kind of take a look at it, right? And boy, did it catch them off guard. The Trump administration, with this freeze, it's going to give a slight pause. And we're not talking about forever. We're talking about a couple of weeks here so that they have time to look at these programs and to see how taxpayer dollars are being used. Guess what? The left doesn't like that one bit. Schumer and his cronies are furious because Trump is cutting off their gravy train. Trump is actually going to look at some of these programs to evaluate whether or not they should even exist. It's always the same playbook from Schumer and the Democrats. Take your money, funnel it into bloated programs that don't help anyone, and then scream when someone tries to hold them accountable. And Schumer said, here's a quote, "They say this is only temporary, but no one should believe that." Oh, really, Chuck? You mean like how you said inflation was only transitory? How you told us that the border was secure? Wow. Make no mistake, the Trump administration's temporary freeze on certain federal grants and loans is under legal attack. And it didn't take Democrats very long to run to the courts. And surprise, surprise, a Biden-appointed judge stopped it yesterday afternoon before it even went into effect. This is what the Trump administration is facing. So let's take a look at U.S. District Judge Lauren, I think it's Alican, a Biden appointee who issued an administrative stay on the funding freeze, pausing Trump's move until Monday. Now, what does this mean? It means that for a few days, this freeze is going to be halted while the legal battle plays out. But let's be honest, and this was predictable. We knew that the Democrats were going to try to do this. The Democrats don't actually care about fiscal responsibility or ensuring tax dollars are spent wisely. No. They only care about keeping the gravy train running for their pet projects. They don't want you looking at where this money is going. And leading the charge, New York Attorney General Letitia James, along with 22 other far-left attorneys general. They claim that this freeze is dangerous and unconstitutional. Well, really? Was she worried about the constitutionality when Biden was shoveling out billions for woke initiatives that nobody asked for? Did she run to the courts to try to stop Joe Biden? I don't remember it. Did I miss it? Let's just be clear here. All right. This freeze isn't indefinite, and it isn't a gutting of necessary programs. The Trump administration has already approved many programs to continue even before the pause took place. And that's all they're asking for is let's reevaluate everything. Let's stop rubber stamping the budget every year and just allowing these programs to go on year after year after year. Some of these programs have not been looked at in decades. And it's just sort of an automatic given that they're going to be funded again. Letitia James and the usual suspects are screaming about the millions of Americans suffering and the chaos, when in reality, essential services are still being funded. This is classic Democrat fear-mongering, trying to get you upset, telling you that your Social Security check's not going to come or your mother or your grandmother's Social Security check's going to be cut. Not going to happen. Not affected. And the media, the left-wing media, they love it. They're eating it up. They made it the headlines yesterday. It dominated the news cycle. The running headline was about Medicaid portals being shut down and law enforcement halting drug enforcement efforts. But hold on. Leavitt immediately addressed this. The Medicaid portal had a brief outage, but no payments were affected. None. Zero. What did she get from setting the record straight? More hysteria from the left. But here's the kicker. They're going to look at every single thing, and you're going to have to justify. If you're a federal agency or you're a federal program, you're going to have to justify your existence in order to keep getting those tax dollars, and that's how it should be. There's a lot of talk about making America great again, and it begins with making America healthy again. Dr. Ashley Lucas and her team at PhD Weight Loss are at the forefront to educate and guide you to be your best self. The millions being spent in propping up Big Pharma are astounding, only to create long-term dependency and harmful side effects. Let's take a natural approach that isn't connected to a pharmaceutical company's bottom line. The coaches at PhD Weight Loss will show you how. The entire program is centered around science and nutrition, a proven roadmap that has helped over 8,000 clients lose over 331,000 pounds. You'll learn what to eat and when, how to quiet cravings, and finally get rid of that belly fat. Plus, you'll never take a medication. How many pounds would you like to lose in 2025? Do it the natural way with PhD Weight Loss, here to lead the charge to make America healthy again. Call PhD Weight Loss and schedule your consultation. 864-644-1900. That's 864-644-1900, or go to myphdweightloss.com. Boy, was it a beautiful day in the Carolinas yesterday, huh? Look, spring may be a while off, but 60 degrees sure does feel like a heat wave, doesn't it, at the end of January. It's a reminder that better days are ahead, and I don't mean just warmer weather, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. We're still in the early days of 2025. Already the news is heating up. Wow. Let's just dive in with the latest headlines, because there's plenty to talk about on the national stage and right here in the Carolinas. Let's start with President Trump and his decision to issue a blanket pardon for everyone involved in the January 6th Capitol attack. It's still getting headlines, and he did that, over a week ago. Senator Lindsey Graham, no stranger to stirring the pot himself, has come out swinging, so to speak, calling it the wrong signal for the country. You got to hand it to Senator Graham. He's never shy about throwing his 2 cents in, even when it cuts against the grain. Now, I know you're thinking, did Trump's pardons really go too far? Well, let's not kid ourselves. January 6th has been used as a political weapon against conservatives from day one. These people weren't treated like peaceful protesters who got a little out of hand. They were treated like enemies of the state, and the left wasted no time weaponizing the legal system to go after them. So if Trump wants to step in and offer a pardon, isn't that within his right as president? Just like Joe Biden was very liberal with his issuing pardons and commutations as well. Senator Lindsey Graham is calling it the wrong signal. So what do you think? Is it? Or is it sending the right signal that we're not going to let the radical left railroad half the country just because they disagree with him? Love to get your feedback. Text me or email me, joey@joeyhudson.com. Switching gears a bit to something a little closer to home. There's a major battle brewing in Simpsonville, South Carolina, just near my hometown. It's between a local church and the statewide Methodist denomination. Here's the deal. The church announced its separation from the Methodist organization last year, changed its name, and decided to go its own way. Sounds kind of simple, right? Local congregation decides they don't want to be affiliated with the national organization. Well, it's not quite that simple. The statewide denomination is now suing the church for its property and its checking accounts. They want all the cash, too. Can you believe it? A church makes a choice to leave, and the denomination wants to swoop in, take what I don't think belongs to them necessarily. It's a classic case of overreach, right? But let's dig a little deeper. This isn't just about a church in Simpsonville. It's part of a broader trend that we're seeing across the country as local churches push back against national organizations that are increasingly out of touch with their congregations. Can you relate to this? Whether it's on issues of doctrine, leadership, or just plain common sense, people are saying enough is enough. And the response from these national bodies, well, they're going to sue them. They're going to sue local churches into submission. Folks, that's not faith, that's control. And I believe it's downright shameful. Now, if you're a foodie, let's be honest, who doesn't love good food? There's some exciting news there as well in the upstate of South Carolina. 6 big restaurant projects have been in the works for what feels like forever are finally going to come to fruition. These include everything from long-awaited openings to some spaces that have been empty for a long, long time now. Greenville has become a real culinary hotspot. It's great to see that growth continuing, but it's not just about food. It's about jobs, economic development, bringing people together. So if you're in the area, keep an eye on those openings and support your local businesses. We're going to have some interviews with some of them very soon on Word on the Street, my weekend show. You can listen to it on Saturdays, 12 noon, Sundays, 7 a.m. And speaking of a local flavor, let's talk about Greenville's Urban Wren restaurant. Unfortunately, there's they've been in the headlines too, but because they have suddenly closed their doors in the West End. Now, the leadership behind this is explaining that it's a story that speaks to the many challenges that small businesses are facing right now. Rising costs, staffing shortages, and competition making it harder and harder than ever to keep their doors open. So, folks, why is it so important to support your local businesses? This is the reason. They're the backbone of our communities, and when they struggle, we all feel the impact. So make a point to go to a locally owned and operated restaurant sometime soon and support them. And say hello to the owner. Let them know you appreciate them. Let them know that you want to support them so they can remain open and they can continue to support our local economy. Now, let's circle back to the bigger picture because there's a theme here with all of these stories that I just talked to you about. Whether it's Trump's pardons, whether it's the battle with the Methodist Church in Simpsonville, or the fight that small businesses find themselves in to stay open, it's all about standing up to overreach, whether it's government, whether it's bigger organizations like the national church organizations, or even out-of-touch elites. Americans are tired of being told what we think. To a degree, don't you think that was what a lot of the elections of 2024 were about? We're just tired of the elites of the ruling class telling us what we think and what we should do. And we're seeing pushback across the board. And again, it's not just politics. It's overflowing into our churches as well. And here's the thing. It's not just happening in the headlines. It's happening everywhere. In our neighborhoods, our schools, our communities. It's happening wherever people are standing up and saying, we're not going to put up with this anymore. We are Americans. We are free. Our voices are important. We're going to stand up to the powers that be because we're ready for change. That's the spirit of America. That's what makes this country great. So what do you think about all this? Do you agree with Lindsey Graham about Trump's pardons? Did it send the wrong signal, as Senator Graham is saying, or was it exactly the right signal? Was it the right move at the right time? Was President Trump correct in coming back and just giving a blanket pardon to everyone involved with January the 6th? Love to hear from you. Email me, joeyhudson.com. You can text me as well. Leave me a message on the MyPillow message line, 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. I love those messages. And remember, always use promo code Joey when you go to MyPillow.com to take advantage of some of the great deals that Michael and Dale has for you. Promo code Joey when you go to MyPillow.com and leave me a message on the MyPillow message line. And what about this fight in Simpsonville with the Methodist Church? And this is happening in other denominations too. I'm not picking on the Methodists. This just happens to be a story in Simpsonville, South Carolina. Should the church be able to keep its property? Should they be able to keep their checking account? the bank account that the local members' hard-earned money, their tithes were deposited in? Or is that the property of the national church as well? Is the denomination justified in this lawsuit? A lot to think about, and I love to get your feedback. Text me, Email me, Joey at joeyhudson.com. Your comments are welcome on the Furman Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. That's 864-477-5639. Email's always welcome, Joey at joeyhudson.com. Speaking of the Furman Ford text line, it's never been more important to support locally run businesses owned by people who actually live here in the upstate. Let me take a minute to talk with you about our friends at Furman Ford. If you're looking for a new vehicle, maybe a great pre-owned vehicle, one you could trust, or maybe you're looking to order that special vehicle. Either way, if you want a new one, a brand new one, or a pre-owned that you can trust, the folks at Furman Ford, they're there to help you. Their name is on the sign because their name is on the line, because every single transaction is important to them. Jim Furman, Matthew Furman. They do business the right way. When you stop by, when you give them a call, or maybe when you just send them a quick email, you're always going to have access to a member of the Furman Ford family. And by the way, they also offer great service, and you're not going to have to wait weeks and weeks to get it done. And you do not have had to purchase your vehicle at Furman Ford. Doesn't even have to be a Ford. They service all makes and models. Visit my friends at Furman Ford online at furmanford.com, furmanford.com. The Walhalla Performing Arts Center, an entertainment staple here in the upstate for the past 20 years, they always bring you the highest quality entertainment. They've got another great slate coming up for you that you don't want to miss this coming weekend. See Gene Watson and the Farewell Party Band in their All the Hits and More tour. This masterful country stylist known as the Singer has been thrilling audiences for a long, long time now. Gene Watson's long career has included 5 number-1 hits, 21 top 10s, and 40 chart singles. See the Grand Ole Opry, remember, this Friday, January the 31st, and then on Saturday, February the 1st, experience the White Collar Comedy Tour. It's a lawyer, a doctor, and a teacher as they walk into the Walhalla Performing Arts Center. Join these 3 funny professionals for a hysterical night of stand-up comedy hosted by Larry Venturino. The Walhalla Performing Arts Center, once again, they have 2 great shows for you this coming weekend. For ticketing information and to see the full upcoming lineup, just visit walhallapac.com, walhallapac.com. And guess what today is? It is Wednesday, Walhalla Holla Wednesday. If you'd like tickets to see the Saturday evening show, the White Collar Comedy Tour, we have some tickets for you. Just text the keyword WIN to 800-905-0989. That's 800-905-0989. Text the keyword WIN, and maybe you'll be the lucky winner of a couple of free tickets to see this great comedy hosted by Larry Venturino this coming weekend. Again, text WIN to 800-905-0989, and good luck to you. On the text line, Albert writes, if Phil the groundhog is retired and moved to a sanctuary, it becomes nothing more than a large rodent to be consumed by a predator. Ask Phil what's best, a pampered life or always being a possible meal for a predator. Albert, I think we know what Phil would choose. Look, this is just another example of the nonsense from the left. I mean, who wants to not have Groundhog Day? This was a story about PETA. Once again, PETA being in the headlines. Texter, wow, Joey, Karoline Leavitt was not lacking of answers in her first White House briefing. Such a smart young lady. You're right. She really, she stood up to him yesterday. She said it clear, and I got some more news for him I'm going to share with you in just a minute. Another big announcement in the press room yesterday. Tony writes, Joey, why is Trump's deportations under fire when Obama oversaw approximately 5,248,413 and 413 returns or removals of illegal migrants during his 8 years in office? Where was the blowback from that? Well, you know where it was, Tony. They're a bunch of hypocrites. They want to try to call out Trump on anything they can. Look, I think that Donald Trump's record of deportations, I think it's going to far surpass the numbers that Obama did. Let's just give him a few more weeks. He's off to a fast start. In my email inbox from Jim writes, Joey, when you and Tara were on competing radio shows, I used to switch back and forth because you're both excellent. Well, thank you. That's very kind of you, Jim. He says, you don't do it as much as most radio and TV hosts, but is it necessary, except on very rare occasions, to mention liberal stations, shows, and specific people by name? There's no reason to give them any publicity at all. He said, it makes me wonder if there's some kind of backroom handshake where liberal and conservative sources agree to mention each other to help fill up airtime. He says, wouldn't it suffice to say that a liberal talk show, personality, or other network thinks this way except when absolutely necessary? I have zero interest in what the women on The View think and silence the show until it's on the next subject. I have no intention of not listening to you. You're in the top 2 hosts on WORD. Well, thank you, Jim. I appreciate that. And I appreciate you continuing to listen. And, Jim, as I said to you in my response to your email, we quite often, as hosts, we use those sound bites so that you can hear what someone has said rather than us just reading it to you. And I get it. You know, I don't like to, I don't necessarily like to watch and listen to what the ladies on The View say either, but it's important that we keep up with what they are saying, with what the left is using to target us. And that's why I often say, I watch it so you don't have to. Hey, Jim, I appreciate your email. Your emails are welcome as well. Joey@joeyhudson.com. Joey@joeyhudson.com. One more thing on that White House press briefing yesterday. Let's talk about the White House and some of the changes in the press room that really got the media's attention yesterday. Karoline Leavitt announced that President Trump is restoring press passes for 440 journalists who had their credentials revoked by the Biden administration. And she made it clear the Trump administration is going to talk to all media, not just the left-wing activists in that briefing room. Here's the exchange.
And in keeping with this revolutionary media approach that President Trump deployed during the campaign, the Trump White House will speak to all media outlets and personalities, not just the legacy media who are seated in this room. Because according to recent polling from Gallup, Americans' trust in mass media has fallen to a record low. Millions of Americans, especially young people, have turned from traditional television outlets and newspapers to consume their news from podcasts, blogs, social media, and other independent outlets. It's essential to our team that we share President Trump's message everywhere and adapt this White House to the new media landscape in 2025. To do this, I'm excited to announce the following changes will be made to this historic James S. Brady briefing room, where Mr. Brady's legacy will endure. This White House believes strongly in the First Amendment, so it's why our team will work diligently to restore the press passes of the 440 journalists whose passes were wrongly revoked by the previous administration. We're also opening up this briefing room to new media voices who produce news-related content and whose outlet is not already represented by one of the seats in this room. We welcome independent journalists, podcasters, social media influencers, and content creators to apply for credentials to cover this White House. And you can apply now on our new website, whitehouse.gov/new media. Starting today, this seat in the front of the room, which is usually occupied by the press secretary's staff, will be called the new media seat. My team will review the applications and give credentials to new media applicants who meet our criteria and pass United States Secret Service requirements to enter.
And folks, is that not classic Trump? And kudos to this lady and to Trump for opening up the press room. Hey, you think there's a chance that, what if I apply? You think I should apply? You think they might invite me to sit in that media chair, that new media chair that she's talking about? Look, Trump is breaking up the media monopoly, making sure that all voices are heard, the independent voices, not just all the so-called real journalists, but the podcasters, the influencers, all of us local talk radio hosts, that everyone will get access to information instead of just letting the usual suspects control the narrative, like Jim Acosta. You hear where he's walking out on CNN? Maybe we're out of time on that today. Maybe tomorrow we'll talk about that. Although I guess Jim probably wouldn't want me talking about Jim Acosta. I don't know. The Biden administration, they wanted a closed club where only the liberal press got to dictate what they thought was newsworthy, what they thought you and I needed to hear every day. President Trump, he's opening the floodgates. No limits here. That's transparency. That's real accountability. Liberal, conservative, again, you don't have to be one of the major networks now to be heard at the White House. You know, I hope, and we did this 4 years ago when in the first Trump administration. he had a talk radio day, and I went up and did my show from the White House. I hope he's going to do that again, and I bet he will. And if he does, I'm going to take you right there with me. That is going to be a lot of fun. By the way, for the so-called journalists who spent the last 4 years saying, oh, Trump is against the free press, where are they now? Crickets. No complaints when Biden was shutting people out. No outrage when conservative voices were silenced. But now that Trump is giving everyone a seat at the table, you can bet the mainstream media is going to be having a meltdown for sure. It all started in a contentious race for Greenville County Sheriff and ended in an upstate courtroom when Cindy Barnett Camp sued sheriff's candidate A.T. Tommy Smith for defaming her in thousands of mailers sent during the campaign, suggesting that she had had an affair with then-candidate Hobart Lewis, who eventually won the race and is now sheriff of Greenville County. On our guest line today, Doug Churdar, the upstate attorney who represented Miss Camp. Welcome, Doug. How are you, sir?
Hey, Joey. I'm fine. Thank you.
Let's just start at the beginning, if you would, Doug, and just give us a quick 30,000-foot view of this case.
Well, here's the 30,000-foot view. This was the most reckless and despicable thing I've ever seen in local politics. And as you know, that's saying a lot. So in 2020, Cindy Barnett Camp is totally on the sidelines. She's living in Anderson, South Carolina, totally uninvolved in this runoff, almost unaware of it. She couldn't even vote. She didn't know A.T. Smith. He didn't know her. And she had worked for Hobart Lewis in Greer for a couple of years back in the early 2000s. Mm-hmm. And Hobart Lewis was her supervisor. And everything about their relationship was completely professional. I mean, Hobart Lewis said those two had never even been in the same patrol car. I mean, they were never alone. There's zero truth to any of this.
Yep. And this was when Hobart Lewis worked for the City of Greer Police Department, correct?
Correct. So I think when, after this primary, Hobart Lewis came out really strong, A.T. Smith and his friends got really concerned and became, I think, desperate and were really willing to do just about anything.
Yeah.
So somebody had floated a rumor, completely false, that Cindy Barnett Camp and Hobart Lewis had an affair. Now, we're also talking 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So, A.T. Smith takes these rumors and puts them on a flyer as absolute fact and mails it out to thousands and thousands of homes.
Wow. Yeah. Now, as I remember, and with me today, Doug Churdar, an upstate attorney who represented Miss Camp. As I remember the mailers, and I was right in the middle of this, Doug. I had all of the candidates on my morning radio show at the time. And do I remember correctly that the flyers that were mailed out referenced her as like Cindy B or some initials that didn't give her whole name? Is that correct?
Yeah, he said in bold letters, "Hey, Hobart, who is Cindy B?" And of course, that was her nickname in Greer. She grew up in Greer, and these were targeted toward Greer. And a bunch of people knew who Cindy B was.
Yeah. I mean, it was kind of common knowledge within the law enforcement community, especially who Cindy B was.
Correct.
Yeah.
Interesting thing was A.T. Smith, who goes by A.T., acted like just using her initial, didn't tell anybody who she was.
Yeah.
But, of course, that was not the case.
Yeah. Now, of course, this was done during what was a pretty heated campaign, and it kind of seems that what happens in a campaign, and you mentioned a minute ago, politics, and look, you and I have been around politics for a long, long time, and we know it can get very heated. The rhetoric, of course, can get out of hand, but is it safe to say here that this case reinforces the fact that even in a political campaign, you can't just say anything, you need to stick to the truth?
Well, you should stick to the truth. I think A.T. Smith owes Hobart Lewis a huge apology, which he has not offered right now. Maybe that'll change. He had to offer an apology and a retraction to Cindy Barnett Camp as part of this settlement. But, you shouldn't be able to lie. You shouldn't be able to make stuff up that damages people's lives and marriages. It's terrible.
Yeah. Back to the apology. walk us through that as part of the settlement. As I understand it, this case, the final results are sealed, but tell us what you can. As I understand it, an apology has been issued. Was that issued publicly? How did A.T. Tommy Smith apologize to Ms. Camp?
Well, he had opportunities to apologize to her in person, but he never took those. So it was just a written apology at the end as part of this settlement. We insisted on it. There was no way we could settle without a retraction and an apology. So he issued an apology and he signed it with the understanding that we were going to post it on social media and try to get the word out there that, he had backed off of it.
Yeah.
So that's what we're doing.
Yeah, I've seen it widely circulated on social media. I checked AT's page, and he does not appear to be active on social media these days, so nothing there. And you mentioned Sheriff Hobart Lewis. Is there an apology coming there? Because, again, I agree with you. There's certainly an apology warranted there because Sheriff Lewis was just as much part of this as Ms. Camp was.
Well, Joey, this mailer said, and she was collateral damage. I mean, they were trying to destroy Hobart Lewis. There's no question about that.
Sure.
So this mailer says Hobart Lewis left Greer PD after having sex with a subordinate. Completely 100% false. And it said that he refused to authorize the release of a polygraph he took regarding the sexual encounter. Again, 100% false. He passed the polygraph. I know more about that polygraph than the guy who did the polygraph.
Yeah.
And I mean, Hobart Lewis was pristine. So yeah, A.T. Smith should be, if he's a man, if he's got any decency about him, he would call Hobart Lewis and say, hey, you know what? It got heated. I got carried away. I'm sorry. I'm not sure that'll happen.
Yeah. Doug Chert, our guest today, he's an upstate attorney who represented Miss Camp in this case, Cindy Barnett Camp, who during a very heated race for the sheriff back in 2020 was accused of having an affair with then candidate Hobart Lewis. Now, talk with us about that polygraph because there's a lot of mention of that. What prompted the polygraph to begin with?
Well, this polygraph is given routinely to employees or people who are trying to get jobs with the Greenville County Sheriff's Office. So Hobart Lewis took a polygraph test. As it turned out, Cindy Barnett at one point took a polygraph test, but it had absolutely nothing to do with this supposed scandal. It was just a routine polygraph test. Both of them passed the polygraph test with flying colors. So there was absolutely nothing to it. And, Hobart Lewis, interestingly, was doing his absolute dead-level best to get those polygraph test results released at the very last minute when A.T. Smith dropped these bombs at the end. So there's no truth that he was trying to cover up that polygraph test. That polygraph test was something that he wanted out there.
Yeah. Now, as we've discussed, this was back in 2020, almost 5 years ago. It's taken quite a while to get to this point. Ms. Camp, this has been really an ordeal for her. Talk with us about her and the fact that, why is it taking this long, I guess?
Well, first, let me talk about her. Cindy Barnett Camp is a great person. She's a lifelong law enforcement officer. She's currently working for the Anderson County Sheriff's Office, and she's as honest as the day is long. I loved representing her. And, when we talk about what can happen in campaigns, I think what sets this particular situation apart is she was completely 100% on the sidelines. I mean, she had been living in Anderson for 10 years. Mm-hmm. Her so-called best life, she had nothing whatsoever to do with this race up here. So that's why it's particularly reprehensible that she got dragged into it.
Yeah. I would imagine that she is happy that this is over with, but I would also expect that this sort of renewed focus on this news story. How does she feel about that?
She feels fine about it because she has absolutely no reason to be embarrassed or ashamed. I mean, she just felt like this guy took an unwarranted shot at her. tied her to Hobart Lewis, whom, by the way, she knew to be a good man.
Yeah.
And this just came out of nowhere. I mean, she wanted him to retract the statement and, of course, settle the case. And both of those things happened.
Yeah. Doug Chertoff with me today in our final moment here. Put your attorney's hat on, which I know you wear it all the time, but what's your advice to future political candidates when they find themselves in this type of situation?
Do you mean my advice to someone like AT or my advice to someone like Hobart?
Your advice to maybe both.
Yeah, well, I got to tell you, these campaigns, unfortunately, seem to get messier and messier. If you stick with the truth, you're probably safe. But I think in the end, what people want probably is a positive message.
Yeah.
I remember, and I wasn't even all that involved in the race, didn't even know Hobart Lewis. But, when I saw this mailer or heard about it, it had the exact opposite effect that I think A.T. Smith wanted it to. It just sealed it for him.
Yeah. Doug, appreciate your time today and our best wishes to your client, Miss Camp.
All right. Thanks a lot, Joey.
Sure thing. That's it for today's edition of Just the Truth. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss Studios. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. If you haven't joined my mailing list yet, visit my website, joeyhudson.com. Click on the Connect with Joey button so that you can receive our emails and the most up-to-date news. Also, join me on my YouTube channel. Be sure and like, comment, and subscribe. Just search for Joey Hudson. As always, thanks for spending a few minutes of your day with me. Do me a favor and forward this episode to a few friends. Just click on the share button and send to your contacts. We need to build an army of conservatives to win our country back, and we can do that by continuing to share the truth with our friends and family. Keep those comments coming via the Furman Ford text line 864-477-JOEY. Email to joey@joeyhudson.com, and I love your messages on the MyPillow message line. Again, that's 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Be sure and take advantage of the MyPillow special, just $14.88 on the standard MyPillows when you use promo code Joey. Order online at mypillow.com or call 800-893-4053. We're back again tomorrow and hope you'll plan to join us. Until then, remember, God's got this. He's still in control.